So Jeffrey, I just want to give you a heads up. There are 2 people who are watching this on YouTube this evening. Anybody watching on YouTube, I'd like to just give them a reminder when we start the meeting that they cannot make any comments and will have to click into the Zoom meeting itself.
Excellent. And Bonnie, we're ready to start when you're ready to record.
Got 1 more minute. We are recording though. So if you'll just let them know on YouTube that they'll have to click into the Zoom meeting for comments, we'll be good to go.
You ready to roll?
Yep, we're ready.
Good evening. It is Tuesday, April 20th. It is 5 p.m. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission, Pitkin County, Colorado. We're not in the Roaring Fork meeting room, first floor. We are on this thing called Zoom and YouTube. This meeting is called to order. Present from Planning and Zoning are Jasmine Tiger, Monty Thompson, Zach Matthews, Joe Kraybacher, and Chelsea Ray Clark. From staff, we have Bonnie Shiles, Cindy Hubin, Suzanne Wolf. And from the applicant, we have Heather Henry with Connect One, Raina Dershowitz, David Corbin, Matt Keeling, and Tom Todd. Again, this meeting is called to order. Looking for any commissioner comment unrelated to the request to amend the East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan presented by Suzanne Wolf and David Corbin. Commissioner comments? So I will say on 420, I sent comments to the Pitkin County attorney with regards to hemp cultivation and copied Suzanne and Cindy that the language adopted by the BOCC looks like it's inconsistent with the county master plan as well as rural and remote zoning. If anyone wants a copy either of the draft that was approved 4-1 by the county commissioners or my letter to Cindy, Suzanne, and John Ely, I'm happy to share that. Any other commissioner comments unrelated to this evening's 1 agenda item?
This is Chelsea. I was going to ask for a copy of the approved language just to see whether the county attorney made the red line requested changes before he presented it to the commissioners.
I will circulate.
Or compare the different.
I will circulate both my letter as well as the approved language from the county commissioners to the planning and zoning commissioners this evening.
Thank you.
Further commissioner comment? Staff comments?
I don't think I have anything for you, Jeffrey.
Cindy or Bonnie?
Nope.
No, thank you.
Excellent. Public comments unrelated to the amending of the East Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan. So just a reminder, this is a duly noticed public hearing on 420. On 221, that was a public hearing. We did take public comment, but it was not publicly noticed. Today, we will take public comment and we will limit that to 3 minutes. So please be respectful of your neighbors and limit your comments to 3 minutes. The first order of business this evening is the request to amend the East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan, and Suzanne Wolf will present, followed by David Corbin and or Heather.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I guess I'll start. I'll go through a little bit. I don't plan to walk through the whole memo. I'll try and keep things sort of brief for you. But obviously we're here after the meeting on the 16th of February, where we basically asked you if you were willing to consider the proposed amendments from the SKICO to amend the East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan. Direction from the P&Z was to bring forward those partial amendments to the master plan for consideration. So that requires under state statute for essentially, we've treated an amendment to a master plan the same as adoption of a master plan. So provided the required notice for an adoption of a master plan. In addition, the applicant did mail notice, which is not a requirement under the statute, but they did mail notice out. Let me get the right number. Heather, 1,848 letters to all of the owners of property in the east of Aspen and Castle Creek planning areas. So, did go beyond kind of the basic statutory requirement for that public notice. So what's in front of you today are the proposed amendments presented by the SKICO, which are included in your packet. And you have a couple of resolutions in front of you from staff. I guess maybe starting there, just to summarize our comments. Obviously, we had recommended against doing a partial amendment to the master plan, that we felt that it was more appropriate to look at changes to the language in the context of a full review or update of the East Aspen master plan, that we didn't think it was appropriate to just look at this one smaller piece and how it affects one area, that we should look at it more broadly, and that we are proposing to bring forward an update to that East Aspen master plan shortly, I think in, coming this summer to you all. So again, we felt that it was really important to look at the broader context rather than just these limited amendments that were proposed. Given that, our position in February is still the same position that we're presenting to you today, is we're recommending against those amendments. So that is the first resolution in your packet, which would be to deny the proposed amendments. And then these amendments and anything else we'd be looking at as part of that master plan update would be looked at in that broader context. Given your direction to bring back the amendments, we did, want to give you our opinion on the proposed language that was presented by the SKICO. So we did that. We did disagree with some of the language they presented. Some is not at issue, changing zone district names to coincide with what the code says today. Just sort of cleaning up some of the factual statements in terms of the Aspen Mountain Master Plan and how that's referenced in the plan. All of that really isn't an issue for staff, obviously, but some of the statements in terms of the recommendation about allowing for rural remote areas to be zoned to other rural zonings, and some of those things, again, we are really concerned about opening things up too much. Even in looking at this in just a limited manner, that some of the language that was proposed is too broad and has greater implications for, again, that rural remote area that has been pretty sacrosanct for the county, and I think really important for us all to consider what it means if we make changes to that area, and if we push the boundary on rural remote a little bit farther out the ridge, what does that mean for continuing farther along the ridge or down into the basin, and so on. So without going into all of the proposed language, I would just say that our concerns and our proposed language, if you all are willing to, adopt amendments to the language, would be in that second resolution to further narrow basically the request to really be pretty specific to just the expansion of the ski area in the Pandora's area, and not provide sort of more of an opening, again, I think that sort of rural, whatever the language was, similar rural zonings or that type of language, we're concerned is too broad. The other concern I think that we, or issue we had with some of the language was language that seemed to want to equate the Aspen Mountain Ski Area Master Plan to a master plan that's approved by the county under the state statute. And we just want to be really careful about that and clear that a ski area master plan is adopted because it's within the ski rec zone district, and is not, it's probably unfortunate that once upon a time when we did this, we called it a master plan and under the ski rec zone district and didn't come up with some other name to differentiate it from master plans adopted under statute. But that's what we've got at this point in the code. But again, we were concerned about some of the language that seemed like it was trying to, equate the recommendations in a ski area master plan with the same as recommendations out of a county adopted master plan. So again, I think that's sort of the simple version. So again, staff's recommendation would be to deny the proposed amendments. If the P&Z is willing to consider the amendments, then we have proposed a second resolution with language changes that address some of those issues I've raised from staff's perspective. And just to note, if you made it through all of the packet materials, I mean, the ski code did provide their own version of a proposed resolution for your consideration. That's in the packet as attachment L. So I think just to note that is there as well. And I think that's it on my end. I don't know if Cindy wanted to jump in or not, but otherwise I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, I'm good. Thank you. I think the memo said everything that we had intended. Thank you.
Commissioner questions or comments for Suzanne or Cindy? Suzanne, can you just touch on the relationship between what was nothing's been remanded back to planning and zoning. This is really just, again, bringing forth the consideration to the text changes within the East of Aspen Master Plan.
Correct. Going back through the BOCC hearings, there was no specific remand by the BOCC to the Planning Commission on these issues. There was obviously concern raised by the BOCC regarding the East Aspen Master Plan and the language, and sort of discussion about whether it would be appropriate to amend that plan in terms of moving forward with this application. So again, not a specific remand back to the P&Z to do either specifically a limited amendment or a full amendment. This is basically, I think, in response to the discussion that came up at the BOCC hearings with regard to the rezoning and concerns about, where that was headed.
Thank you. Zach, Joe, Chelsea, Jasmine, questions for Suzanne? Applicant presentation by David, Heather.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I think you're going to get both Heather and I in this process.
Okay.
Thank you for hearing us. And as you previously noted, Ronna Dershowitz and Matt Keeling are also here and attending on Aspen Skiing Company's behalf. In addition to Heather, Tom Todd at Holland and Hart is also appearing as I think you know. I appreciate Suzanne's summary of the staff memo. And while we have sort of some difference of opinion with staff as to really the scope or breadth of subject matter that we think is before the board or needs or may necessitate some comment, findings and recommendation by the board, we appreciate that the focus tonight is narrowly aimed at the proposed amendments to the Mountain Master Plan, or excuse me, not to the Mountain Master Plan, but to the East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan, and agree that that will be the subject of discussion. Our presentation will be, I think, very brief and directed in that sense. We did receive the staff packet on Friday, And in many, many cases, in considering staff's response to our proposed amendments and their explicit recommendations of perhaps alternate language, we met and discussed those yesterday and believe that we can accept many of the changes that were suggested by staff and or make some slight modifications to some of the language we had first proposed in response to staff's comments, and perhaps find common ground across nearly all, if not all, of the proposed amendments. So in our presentation later, we would intend to comment not just on our original amendments, but to respond to staff's proposals regarding them, and perhaps provide something that's acceptable to both the county and to the applicant. So with that, we'll start. We thought we might start with history, since the very subject matter always seems to bring up the question of, what was the intent in terms of the community and skiing on the east aspect of Aspen Mountain. And we thought we'd begin with a little history, and courtesy of the archives of the Historical Museum, provide for you the 1948 trail map, which you can readily see Lift 1 coming right out of town, summiting at essentially what's the top of the FIS lift today, and Lift 2 then continuing sort of across the very top center of the page to the original sun deck at the top of the mountain. And we show you this in large part, not merely because the trail system is certainly quite a bit different today than it was in 1948, but quite interestingly enough, if you look on the left-hand side of this map, there is a trail, as Heather's cursor is pointing it out right here, from top of mountain to valley floor down the east aspect of Aspen Mountain. In this particular case, in 1948, that trail location was actually the difficult creek drainage, and it's clearly not our intent to propose, and we're not discussing here skiing in that drainage, but we find it interesting and believe it pertinent that skiing the east side, if you will, or the east aspect of terrain on Aspen Mountain really has been an idea and a practice that's at least 75 years old. So we don't think there's anything particularly new or shocking about the substance of our proposal, and hope you'll take this historic background into account in thinking about how plans for this side of the mountain and its neighborhood planning area might be considered. Heather? Just wanted also to remind you very briefly of some of the materials that Tom presented at our last hearing in February, really summarized in the Holland and Hart memo that was in our supplemental submission. But we do believe that all of these planning documents and or regulations or ordinances and the dates of their adoptions are all important. And it's really how all of these relate and in fact are read together and reconciled that we're really here and discussing. So I'd remind you again, in 1994, rural and remote zoning was really created and put forth, and the BOCC's direction to P&Z at the time was that the development of ski uses should not be precluded. And commercial recreational uses in rural and remote at its origination and all the way until 2006 were really subject to special review. They were permissible, albeit subject to special review. In 1997-98, the Aspen Mountain Master Plan of that era was proposed, considered, and adopted by BOCC resolution in 1998. Pandora's was described and included in that master plan 24 years ago now, under the section of uses allowed by special review, when it would be presented as an amendment to the Aspen Mountain Master Plan. If you were to go back and look through that document, there are multiple descriptions and maps of Pandora's included in the 97-98 plan. And it quite clearly was described, it was contemplated. Again, its use was not approved until there was an amendment to the Aspen Mountain Master Plan. There were several other uses contemplated on Aspen Mountain in that 98 plan that were specifically dependent upon the study and really completion of the Richmond Ridge Management Plan. So there certainly were a variety of things considered that were not adopted immediately, but were going to be considered and follow the review of the Richmond Ridge Management Plan. That plan was ultimately adopted in 2000, described as the Little Annie Richmond Ridge Pearl Pass Management Plan, the scope of which extended really from right behind the sun deck all the way to Pearl Pass. And it was largely a transportation and travel management plan, if you will, looking at access, uses of roads, variety of those kinds of concerns about how people got in, got out of that area, the nature and means of that access and the impacts from it. Only one of 3 phases of that plan were adopted. There were no comments in that plan or recommendations regarding Pandora's terrain, its use, its land uses in any form. And to the degree there are travel and access issues related to it, we were then and are now in conformance, and the plan, the mountain plan that was then subsequently newly approved and restated in 2019, added additional provisions restricting our use on the backside roads through Little Annie's and Midnight Mine. And as a consequence, our participation in that and that newly adopted plan has actually reduced other aspects related to us with respect to our use on those roads. So we think we've certainly met the spirit of that plan and continue to conform with it. The East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan, again, adopted in 2003. It looked at the Pandora's area as a part of a neighborhood planning area that included Aspen Mountain / Richmond Ridge. Both aspects of that were included in the same planning area, neighborhood planning area. And AFR 10, rural remote, and AF ski zone districts were all included in that plan, and they were included in the same neighborhood planning area. So in the same singular neighborhood planning area, commercial skiing already existed and existed in concert with rural and remote zoning at the same time. And all of the zone districts, AFR 10, rural and remote, and obviously ski rec permitted commercial skiing, but AFR 10 and rural and remote likewise considered commercial skiing a permissible use subject to special review. And then finally in 2006, with the comprehensive Pitkin County Code revision, the commercial skiing was omitted from the use table as a use subject to special review in rural and remote in AR 10. So we think that's the regulatory context that we are trying to plan within, and all of which to some degree have bearing upon our mountain master plan and the application for Pandora's as part of it. The purpose and intent of our amendments, again, as I said at the beginning, we're going to try to be fairly narrow, but we're trying to clarify and really conform the East of Aspen Independence Plan language with the original intent and the permissible uses in those areas and those zone districts at the time of the 2000, East of Aspen Master Plan's adoption. We want to try to track and make sure we conform with current code. So there are a couple of ministerial revisions, as Suzanne alluded to before, that are fairly rote and easily made. And we wanted also just to simply acknowledge, the reality of skiing on the front of Aspen Mountain, pursuant to our special use permit and the local land use regulations, as well as these master plans. So next, the rationale for our amendments and rezoning. The East of Aspen and Independence Pass Master Plan basically focuses on controlling residential development. I assume you've revisited it. I know it's in the packet and has been referred to and is certainly in the voluminous records of our application at this point. But if you go through that plan, page after page after page, across all of the neighborhood planning areas, the first and primary concern and really purpose in the plan is to control and manage residential development. We understand that, we accept it, we have no problems with that. It's perfectly understandable for the county. Underlying all of that is an effort to maintain the rural character of these areas. We likewise agree with that. We think it's also equally important to point out what that East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan doesn't do. It didn't preclude skiing. It doesn't this day preclude skiing, really, because commercial skiing and ski rec is still in it. So for that purpose, I think it's really important to recognize, particularly at the time of the plan's adoption, there was no intention to preclude skiing. Ski rec itself is a rural zone district. It's quite clear in the code, both in the code's narrative and in tables in the code. Ski terrain itself, we believe in the form of meadows and forests, maintains the open and rural character of the land. So as a functional matter, we believe we really, in proposing skiing in these areas, conform with the county's interest in maintaining and promoting rural character. Specifically with respect to our application that remains pending, we've further agreed to limit development in Pandora's to ski infrastructure. We are not proposing some uses that are permissible in ski rec, such as cabins, lodges, housing, employee housing, that is, restaurants, and those sort of uses. We've agreed we won't do any of that. And as a consequence, we are, in our view, proposing something that actually includes even less, if you will, vertical development, vertical building construction, and those sorts of impacts than even rural and remote permits. So in that sense, we think our proposal is perfectly aligned with the effort to control residential development. We think it's perfectly in line with the effort to maintain and, if you will, even enhance and protect the rural character of the county. Okay, Heather?
Thanks. So at this point, as David mentioned, we received staff's packet on Friday, and having been in your seat, knowing that basically there was 2 resolutions from staff and 1 from us, might be impossible to sort through. So we essentially went ahead from our perspective and put together really a track changes, but using staff's amendment, our staff's resolution as a basis for that. So our thought, again, depending on where the board wants to go with this, if we're moving in this direction, was we could use this as a tool to essentially make that comparison. But recognizing that we are a public hearing, we're not certain where you wanted to insert that. So whether we wanted to start to go through this, whether you wanted to ask us any questions first, whether we wanted to open up public comment next, we are at your disposal from that perspective.
Thank you, Heather. Questions for either David or Heather from the commissioners before we open for public comment? So Heather, I'm going to say let's open for public comment first,
Okay.
and we can come back to the reso or any changes in either of the resos with respect to which way the commissioners are going to go with regards to either resolution 1 or resolution 2. And that'll help sort of drive everyone's time and energy.
Perfect.
So-
So I'll stop sharing then, I would think, just so then you can see full screen without the rest of the information.
Excellent, thank you. At this point, Bonnie, I will, and again, any commissioner questions for either Heather or David in regards to resolution 1 or resolution 2 as they're currently drafted? At this point in time, it is a duly noticed public hearing, and I will open to public comment. We have a 3-minute timer at the ready, and you will hear an obnoxious Android ring at the end of 3 minutes. So please try to limit your comments and don't repeat what your neighbors already presented or what's in the letters in our packet. So thank you.
Okay, so I have 12 attendees online. Jeffrey, just so you know, I'm going to call on you, the attendees, open up to allow you to talk, and then we'll go on to the next person. I have a Mr. Arthur Cowperthwaite. Sorry, I can't see the whole name. Arthur, would you like to unmute yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. So I am Arthur Copperthwaite. I'm a senior project manager with Sinclair Building Architecture Design. And we are here representing our client, Independence 44681, and that is at Highway 82. And we are really here simply to become more informed, to become better citizens and participants in the East of Aspen Caucus, the East Aspen Caucus. And we really do not have any comment at this point in time. We appreciate the invitation to join in the meeting and are here to learn.
Arthur, thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. I have a Mr. David Clark. David, can you unmute?
Yeah, hi. I don't have any comments.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Next, I have a Mr. Edgar Boyles. Mr. Edgar, can you unmute, please?
Hi. I'm calling in from afar and a resident of the East of Aspen area since 1975. Have remember the whole Little Annie project, etc. And I just think that there will be, even though there seems to be some dispute whether there'll be impact of this development, I can't believe there won't be to the ecology of the forest and the elk herds up there. We have seen what's happened on the valley floor with the protected area of the North Star, and the indicator species there has left the area, the great blue heron. I just feel that we're at a point and time in our lives there in Aspen where we just need to take care more of the environment and not think so much of what skier experience is. I have been a skier since I was 9 years old and certainly enjoyed skiing on Aspen Mountain forever, and Pandora's. It's easily accessible and I've enjoyed it over the years. My position and my feeling is that further development there is probably merely some sort of a, would be definitely a PR feather in the ski company's hat to have a further item to sell as a new and shiny thing, but it already exists. It just seems to me that there's not a crying demand for it from the skiing populace that absolutely is demanding that this be done for them. The downside to it, I think, could be quite tremendous to the overall environment of the region there. Thank you.
Edgar, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. I have a Mr. John Doyle. Hi, John.
Hello. Hi. I just wanted to, reemphasize what Edgar Boyles just said. That just in the last month, there have been 2 groups of skiers that have skied below Walsh's and had to be escorted out through the North Star Nature Preserve. And I think putting a lift in is going to increase that probability and further turn the North Star Nature Preserve into something that is not a nature preserve. I also would like to just point out that I really don't think that the ski company has demonstrated a need for more lift serve skiing. We have 4 ski areas already in the Upper Valley and some of the shortest lift lines in the whole state of Colorado. I applaud their efforts to limit this to just the lift and not lodging or any of the ancillary things that were originally proposed. But there's no need for this, especially during our current climate crisis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John.
I have a Mr. Justin Nyberg. Justin?
Hi, everyone. No comment from me tonight. Thanks very much, though.
Thank you. I have a Miss Marcella Larson. Marcella, are you able to speak?
So I think I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is Marcella Larson. I'll have to speak quickly on a matter that should not be limited to 3 minutes. It's unfortunate that what might be the precursor to a significant upzoning of the backcountry is scheduled in the off season and hasn't been covered by the press. So you likely won't get much comment here on what is a community master plan. So you can talk about 1,000 mailings, but like for the average Joe, they won't get it. They don't know what it means. Larson Family LP has submitted extensive comments to you already, which show that alpine ski areas were never allowed under either the prior code or the current code. I'm here as an individual, a former P&Z member for over 10 years, a land use practitioner with extensive experience in land use master planning and also consistency with master plans. I'm confident what is being proposed here is not legal and unfortunately asks you to set aside your duties as representatives of the public interest in order to facilitate private development. And so the concept that you would negotiate a common ground in this hearing to me is really offensive to public process. And so as a former P&Z member, I've sat with you on some of our local P&Z boards in the consideration and adoption of master plans, including the joint adoption of the AACP by 2 planning boards, the city and county. To my knowledge, this P&Z has never considered a developer initiated change to a master plan, much less one without an actual comprehensive planning process as contemplated by the state statutes and the county charter. Again, you are the P&Z and you are charged to engage in actual planning. I do understand why ski company is trying to amend a master plan. what lacks the hallmark of comprehensive planning and actual outreach to the community and analysis of the existing conditions. Maybe you're frustrated. It has taken a long time for staff to update its various master plans, yet that's something you could have done as a P&Z. To now undermine county long-range planning staff, which is very much engaged in updating the plan and issue, including extensive materials on their website, seems to me to be a failure to serve the public interest and rather do what is improper, facilitate spot zoning for a particular developer. I urge you to do the right thing and follow staff's recommendations. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Marcella.
Thank you, Marcella. I have a Mr. Michael Miracle.
Nothing for me. Thank you. Just listening in.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm scrolling down, guys. I have a Nigel. Nigel.
Oh, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. I've really no comment. I'm representing a family that have residence in Aspen. I'm listening in and feeding back to them.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a Sally Sparehawk. Sally, do you have any comments this evening?
No comments, just listening in. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a Mr. Victor Gurdon. Victor, do you have anything to say this evening? Hello? Victor, are you able to speak? Victor, we will come back to you if you're having issues talking. Try again. I'll see if I can work with you to unmute. I have a Miss Wendy Larson. Wendy, are you able to speak?
I am, and can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just would like to say that what my daughter said, Marcella Larson, is absolutely correct. I've been in the land use planning business for my entire professional career, which dates back to 1975. And I have never seen, even in the state of Florida, anything like this, where you have inconsistent, you have a planning and zoning board being asked to partially amend a plan without any community outreach, much less actual planning. Staff should be able to proceed with their own plans and bring forward to you an orderly manner. That's all I have.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. I have a Mr. Weston Boyles.
Hello, thank you so much for having us. I do want to applaud the Aspen Seed Company for their work and commitment in some programs towards sustainability, protect our winners and some other things like that. But I greatly fear that many people are not quite paying attention to the science, as Greta Thunberg has been consistently putting out there, and many other young climate activists. We need to wake up and pay attention now. There's a saying that goes, only an economist or a fool would believe we can have infinite growth on a finite planet. This is a further plan for growth. If the Aspen Steam Company truly wants to stand by their word and put the word sustainability next to its word, it needs to understand what sustainability means. We must act locally and think globally. So we must think about, it might seem like a few people are being a bit alarmist about a small development in the Pandora's box area. But how many helicopters are you going to be running to put in a lift service? How much carbon do those helicopters produce? How many trees are you going to cut down? How much impact to the surrounding area? And then how much more usage and growth will you have related to this? I greatly feared that the Aspen Steam Company would be liable of greenwashing. I work with a lot of indigenous communities throughout the world and with young people who are waking up to the fact that there's a lot of powerful companies and corporations that have a very slick front end claiming their commitment to sustainability. And in fact, behind them, they're driven by growth and more money. I plead the Aspen Steam Company, stand true to your commitment. You can be a leader. You can be a leader in the climate solution, but we have to act now, absolutely now, and please do not plan more growth. Plan how can we have a better user experience, but actually reduce our impact. And you, David Corbin, you mentioned a map there that talked about access to the lower valleys. We're in a time when there was plans to have a base village in the North Star Nature Preserve, which thankfully was never did and never was allowed. But it's super important that we stay true to those commitments so that we can be proud to be from Aspen. I grew up in Aspen. I was born at Aspen Valley Hospital. I really hope to be proud of Aspen, and we have a chance to be a leader in finding better solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Weston.
So I'm going to try Victor Gurdon one more time. Did you have any comments, Victor? Victor, do you have any comments this evening? I've unmuted Victor, but he doesn't seem to have anything to say or is unable to speak right now. I apologize if there is a IT problem going on, but with that being said, Jeffrey, he is our very last attendee, and it's back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bonnie. Any commissioner questions or comments for either the staff or the applicant, having heard public comment? Suzanne, anything further you want to add at this point? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it back to Heather. Cindy?
No, but I'm here for questions if anybody has any questions of me. Thank you.
I guess for Cindy and Suzanne, I'm still puzzled. If we accept or adopt resolution number 2, we're going to be back here in a couple of weeks with a further reso, as Heather and David have been nice enough to put in the back of the packet. Again, I'm wondering if we're actually satisfying where the Aspen Skiing Company left off with regards to the Pandora expansion in 2019, 2020. Does just the update to the East of Aspen Master Plan satisfy what the BOCC was looking for when they sort of stalled their vote?
I guess I can try and answer that, or maybe I can't really answer that because I can't answer for the BOCC, obviously. You know, the various concerns they had regarding the rezoning related to the East Aspen Master Plan, as well as the changed conditions argument that had been presented to them. So, you know, if you all adopt a resolution today and the East Aspen Master Plan, then your next step would be to then consider a resolution making a further recommendation to the BOCC based on the amended East Aspen Master Plan. That would go back in front of the BOCC. I mean, essentially the rezoning ordinance and the resolution related to the ski rec master plan for the Pandora's area has been continued multiple times by the BOCC and is just kind of stalled at that point. So a further recommendation from you back to BOCC I guess in any manner, either, with making changes to the master plan and the rezoning or not, then we will go back to the BOCC and, start that conversation again with them.
Yeah, if I may, I think that was our understanding as well, right? Without a motion, none of us can put particular words into the BOCC's mouth. But we left with three primary items of contention, essentially, and really from two different commissioners. So one really did focus on this kind of rural and remote, the sanctity of rural and remote, what it meant, its history, its intention, as initially implemented. The second was the conformance with the East of Aspen master plan. And at the time, quite specifically, the items that we're now looking at amending, and really that direction, as we understood it, was, what does this really mean, right? And to kind of, and I think the quote was to have P&Z, have planning and zoning relook at those conflicts and what did they mean. And then the third was essentially related to our data regarding changed conditions. So ultimately, and in the subsequent time, we've been able to gather significant data regarding change conditions. So our ultimate goal is really, you can see how coming back and putting forward these amendments are our way, and really our only way, to have the conversation about both the intention of rural and remote, and then these, what is the understanding and the interpretation of those conflicts within the East of Aspen, and these amendments as a path to really clarify that. So ultimately, our view would be that a resolution that would capture all three of those things. I think the history of rural and remote and the East of Aspen amendments are quite intertwined. We would also like to ensure that we present the information regarding the change conditions, and we've done some of that in the past, but then have a significant discussion about that so that P&Z can also include that. We're asking that that be included in a resolution that goes back up to the BOCC. So ultimately, a resolution that's approving the amendments, but then a second resolution that would reaffirm the recommendation to rezone, now based on conformance with the East of Aspen, as well as an affirmation of the change conditions. That's our ideal.
Yeah, Heather, I would also add that regardless of the outcome and specifically how the Planning and Zoning Commission may look at our proposed amendments to the East of Aspen plan, that however that turns out, if we are to go back to BOCC and there has been some change to the East of Aspen plan in any respect, we think we likewise, since our master plan accepting Pandora's has been approved in 2019, we think P&Z, even though you've previously made a recommendation to rezone and you've previously made a recommendation for all of our mountain master plan to be considered and approved by the BOCC, we think now the master plan being approved, accepting Pandora's in it, we think if you were to propose a new change, we would need your recommendation that Pandora's as an isolated area be included in our now adopted 2019 master plan. So there's also that, if you will, sort of little plug, I think, that probably needs to be fitted.
Jasmine, Monty, Zach, Joe, or Chelsea, questions for David and or Heather? Questions with regards to either resolution number 1, which is on page 9, or resolution number 2, which is on page 12?
I have a question. I have a question.
Sorry, Joe.
So I guess it's maybe two parts, one for staff and one for Dave. Is what's the, maybe start with Dave, what's the time, and I'll ask the questions and then I'll mute out. You guys can take it from there. But what's the timing for this, the actual expansion? And is there a big concern if, the staff has apparently done a fair amount of work on the overall plan? Obviously, they want to have a complete plan and just not amending an existing plan. And in the intro, Suzanne had mentioned that they're going to probably have that done by the summer. How does that adversely impact your timing for the project? And I guess the second question, and maybe it's more a Rana question, is if we proceed and approve this with an amendment, do you have concerns regarding any potential legal action that may be brought that would end up, kind of putting us back to square one, or one of the opponents, so to speak, to bring a lawsuit or a Rule 106 action to set aside this decision on the theory that state law doesn't allow us to amend the master plan partially, and we have to do the whole plan. So that's kind of several questions in there. And then for staff, I just wanted to kind of reconfirm what staff believes is the timing to do the full master plan. Thanks.
Joe, respond first to our timing, if you would like. We certainly did not contemplate undertaking any improvements in the Pandora's area this summer. That's quite clear that we're not at that point, given this process and the fact that we've got to return to BOCC for consideration of inclusion of Pandora's into the now adopted master plan. So we certainly don't have any work contemplated this year. We would hope that with further county review by the BOCC sometime this summer following this body's deliberation, that we would hopefully obtain an approval and be able to commence work in the Pandora's area next summer, summer of 22, if you will. I appreciate kind of your underlying question, sort of partially unstated, as to whether or not it would be okay to wait for a new comprehensive east of Aspen Independence Pass plan. I guess I have several thoughts on that. It's been 20 years plus since the adoption of that plan, and nothing has come of updates or revision in that period of time. We frankly wouldn't want to wait for an indefinite period of time for that process, whatever it may turn out to be, to unfold. And we think it would be somewhat unfair to impose that on us. It's further complicated because the county charter basically gives caucus, if you will, the caucuses, sort of the initiation of sub-area plans or area plans within the comp plan. And as we've said before, the irony is caucus members are electors, and we really aren't members of the caucus in the East of Aspen caucus in particular. It's further complicated by the fact that this planning area, east of Aspen and Independence Pass, there's a caucus for the East of Aspen portion of it. There is no caucus for the Independence Pass portion of this planning area. That's where Pandora's sits. So there's really no caucus sitting that has an applicable process for Independence Pass, where our property sits. If a planning process has been undertaken now for east of Aspen, it's been interesting that we haven't been invited to participate. Staff has not solicited our opinion about it. If that process is underway, what's our place in it? There apparently is no place for us in it. Yet, the code requires that we submit mountain master plans. Now, there can be a debate and a discussion about whether mountain master plans should or should not be made part of and adopted into the comp plan. You know, that issue could be deferred. We don't have to press that forward. But by code, we do have to submit mountain master plans. And we have done so. We have an application still pending as to a portion of our proposed mountain master plan. It's been pending for a couple of years now. We've been at it for a while. There's no surprise to anybody about us being in process. We think it's really timely to consider this, considering our pending application. We have also very narrowly spoken to the proposed amendments of the East of Aspen plan, strictly to address the subject of skiing. We appreciate that the county may want to have a new comp plan for this whole area. All we're trying to do is make clear that under the existing plan, that is something we are subject to under our long-standing application, that we be permitted to try to reconcile and clarify some of the language with respect to that plan and its application to what we have proposed. So we'd very much like to go forward today, look at very narrow amendment proposals to the East of Aspen plan insofar as they affect us and our neighborhood planning area and the goals and objectives in that planning area. And we think we're very narrowly targeted with that. And we think as between the two resolutions, we can very closely get to the language that staff seem to find acceptable with respect to approving amendments.
And Joe, to the second part of your question, while certainly anyone can file a lawsuit about anything, we're very comfortable that the process that is being recommended is not in conflict with anything in the state statutes or in the code. And I believe my recollection is that county attorney confirmed at the last hearing that this was an acceptable path forward. Again, can we stop anyone from filing a complaint? No, but at the same time, we can't sit still. And as David said, we've been trying to go through the process for multiple years now and don't have a seat at the East of Aspen plan amendment table, nor do we have an indication of the timeline on that. And while, as David said, no, we cannot, do not plan on commencing work this summer, that's only because we keep going round in circles, and would very much like to commence the work as soon as we have the approvals, and don't believe that it is appropriate at this time to delay that for what could well be multiple more years.
So did you have follow-up for Raina or David? And then I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. Joe, any follow-up? Okay, Cindy?
Yeah, thank you. Totally understand the ski co's frustration with the timing and the timeline of being in the process. And we do have a large body of work that's been done on the existing conditions for the East of Aspen master plan. That information, as far as I understand, is on the web. We felt very conflicted in terms of this process with the ski coast being in process for as long as they have, and sending out notice about starting the East of Aspen master plan public comment review. We, as you know, the master planning area is larger than the East of Aspen caucus area. So we've been in touch with the East of Aspen caucus area group to ask them to help us with looking at the existing conditions report, making sure that the existing conditions are in line with what they understand. But as far as reaching out to the entire area, we have not done that yet because we felt like the timing was just uncanny, how it was just in sync with this process for the ski co. And so we have every intention of sending out the East of Aspen master plan public comment and public involvement very soon, very shortly, to get everyone involved from the existing conditions perspective and start to have the discussions about the overall planning area. And I have a hard time when I hear David Corbin refer to not being a part of the caucus, not being a part of the master planning area. That's just not true. Anyone who's within the master planning area is a part of it and is able to be a part of it and bring their comments forward. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that the ski co or anyone else within the planning area boundary is not precluded from any part of that process. So it is true that the formal process has not been rolled out yet for the reasons I've been throwing out there, but it's very close to being rolled out there. Does that answer your question, Joe, or was there more that I'm forgetting?
No, thank you, Cindy. I think that answers it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I should unmute. Jasmine, Monty, Zach, or Chelsea, any further comments for staff or the applicant? For the planning commissioners, do you want to entertain a thumbs up or thumbs down on resolution number 1 or number 2? Or there's an opportunity also to open up the applicant, which would be a more of a thorough deep dive in terms of the resolutions. Again, resolution number 1 would deny the proposed amendments, and number 2, which is on page 12, would adopt the amendments, and it's basically taking staff's language with regards or with respect to the adoption of the amendments to the 2003 East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan.
Jeffrey, I have a quick question. Sorry.
Oh. Zach, it's all yours.
Yo, thanks. I have 2 questions actually. One's a sort of a process question, and the first one is for Suzanne. In staff's memo, the issue that you had with, can you explain to me a little bit more the issue that you had with SkiCo's definition of ski rec zoning and whether it precluded Nordic skiing, which in the code is obviously part of ski rec zoning, and how that wording, what issue you had with that wording? And that's for Suzanne.
Yeah, give me a sec, Zach. I'm just getting to that language. Right. I mean, the issue there is if you look at this, I mean, it's stated as a goal or objective. So the goal or objective in the plan today is preserve the open space and recreational values on the face of Aspen Mountain.
Right.
But then what gets added is the including downhill cross-country skiing development of which should not be precluded. So it's kind of going beyond that broader language of a goal and kind of changing the intent of the statement. I think that was our concern. Is I don't think anybody has any argument that that the recreational value of Aspen Mountain, the ski area, has recreational value as a ski area. It also provides open space because of the nature of it being a ski area and not, a residential subdivision. So again, I think it was just more of a concern about what is it we're trying to state there? What's the goal? And are we trying to, as stating a goal, we're really talking more about preservation of open lands and the recreational uses. And the language is talking to development of ski uses. I mean, I think that use of the word, the development, which should not be precluded, I think it's really important to call that out. If the goal is talking about preservation of the uses that are there, what's intended by adding that language, the development of which there's already developed skiing. So again, it was a concern about where's the, is this, what's the intent here? Is it taking it beyond, how broad is that opening the door of that original goal?
Yeah, and so my concern with this is that in the 2015 the Aspen Nordic Council master plan, which was approved by the BOCC and Pitkin County Open Space, identified the Richmond Ridge as being basically at the top of their list of, they did a Nordic terrain suitability analysis, and they deemed the Richmond Ridge area to be one of their goal expansion areas. And so I just wanted to make sure that the new language doesn't preclude that, or acknowledges that the fact that Pitkin County Open Space, Aspen Nordic Council Master Plan has identified this area for Nordic expansion. And so that use is deemed appropriate in ski rec. So if it's going to be, I just wanted to make sure that that use was acknowledged and that there wasn't any language that was attempting to preclude that from further exploration. Does that make sense?
Zach, if I could hop in, I think that's a really important point. And we really looked very specifically at that language in order to have those types of decisions vetted as part of the overall master plan update for not only the Richmond Ridge area, but for the east of Aspen area. So we didn't want to put the cart before the horse and say that the master plan was in support of that without doing that public outreach process. We understand that the Board of County Commissioners, the Nordic Council, and the Open Space and Trails Board have looked at that as, definitely a preference in that area. But the master plan, as Suzanne pointed out right now, speaks to the furthering the existing uses, but doesn't speak to expansion. So that's where we were going with that. So I think that there is a little conflict there with what you just said, but I think that that should be vetted in a full master plan process.
And I think, if I may, there's nothing about that we disagree with. And in fact, in the combination of, our proposed amendments and staff's resolution choice number 2, we've proposed how to change some of that language, remove things that would continue to ensure that this was narrowed to the issue at hand, strictly related to Pandora's area. And so you may find increased comfort level if we go through those individually, Zach.
Okay, thanks. And then I just have one more sort of, it's more of a process question, and I guess I direct it towards Mr. Corbin or Skiko. And I'm just sort of having an issue, or just wanted to, I have an issue with this skier use being used as a metric for expansion. And I know that the last meeting that we had, we went through a bunch of numbers with skier use, and that there was a game camera put at the bottom of the area. And I was sort of at the time thinking about it, because I am probably on that game camera multiple times, in sometimes multiple times in a day. I think that I would love to know for how many skier visits, or how many skiers that were photographed going through that game camera, on what level of recidivism is in there, because I think the numbers seemed very high and were inflated. And I just know from my personal experience and talking to a lot of people that ski back there, that it's the same 100 or 200 people that are skiing that area multiple times a day. And so you have a small amount of people that are inflating the numbers a lot. And I guess my main concern is that, and this may be something for the board to contemplate, is that, using skier visits as a metric for expansion or for adding new skier train is a very slippery slope. If the metric is, we've had the plan to open this area for skier expansion since 1995, and our metric is, or at least for ski company, that this is good skiing and it's contiguous terrain, so it has the least amount of environmental impact. Well, that's something, but we had the Little Annie's Ski Corporation not too long ago that was trying to, put a lift in the Little Annie's ski basin. And I guess what I'm concerned about is having another applicant come for some sort of project or expansion on the backside of Aspen Mountain. And if you have a mining claim in Little Annie's, you can put up a game camera and say, hey, I have 1,000 snowmobilers go by here every day. Well, that's not the metric for expansion. There has to be a little broader, in more complex analysis of it. And so I'm having some trouble with that being used as an explanation for this expansion into this terrain. That's my.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I think I can jump in first, and then David can add to this. So the challenge here is that we're adding on a particular issue around change conditions, which is only one factor in the criteria for a rezoning. The rest of the factors related to the rezoning, including many that you just identified, right? So regarding contiguousness with an existing zone district, the exact same zone district, conformance, and in fact, how we support the comprehensive plan. So recreation, the stability of pretty much the largest economic driver in Pitkin County, that competitiveness of that economic driver. So all of those criteria were part of the original rezoning application that ultimately this board recommended that approval to rezone. So then we're bringing back a singular criteria just because of the questioning from BOCC around the data related to change conditions. So we're sparing you, right, from rehashing kind of all of the components of the rezoning, and instead saying, does the data around the change conditions support that one particular criteria for rezoning? And then to back up, just what you were describing around our game camera counts is exactly what we're talking about. So basically, Pandora's operates as lift served terrain at this point, but without the safety factors, without avalanche mitigation, without emergency services, without terrain management. And so even the fact that you might have lapped our camera several times, that's exactly what we're saying. That wasn't possible until recently, right? And so whether it's new people that have tried that area, or whether it's people trafficking it multiple times a day, that's what we're saying. That's what has changed so significantly over time to warrant the change in conditions, along with all the other criteria of the rezoning. So that may not answer your question entirely, but hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, and Zach, if I may add, I appreciate your concern or question with respect to what metric might drive our decision or our aspiration to open terrain. For one thing, I certainly can't deny that we think about whether an area is already skied or not, and how heavily is it skied when we consider opening it more formally, dropping a rope or whatever that may be. So the volume or extent of use, we think quite legitimately is a factor to be considered in whether we propose to open terrain or not. But I'd really probably take you back to really our Forest Service process, where on any particular proposal such as this for terrain, we have to go through a very rigorous purpose and need analysis conducted by the Forest Service, made part of their decision notice when they ultimately accepted our master plan and approved our proposal for Pandora's. And the purpose and need, which is acknowledged in the Forest Service document, and which I believe has been distributed to you again, the decision notice by Suzanne in the package, you'll find in that decision notice the Forest Supervisor's description of the purpose and need and the reasons that the Service essentially has approved the project proposal to open Pandora's. And that includes a whole lot of both quantifiable information and qualitative information. And I suppose I'd stand most strongly on the qualitative aspect of it. So for us, when we look at Pandora's, there are a variety of things about that are particularly appealing. The different aspect, the fact that you do have new or more terrain, that sort of northeast aspect, that's high on the mountain, that will retain snow, that gives the skier a new experience, that adds about 25% of this terrain for intermediate access. That also brings new and interesting expert terrain to it, that improves with the lift and the trails, the overall circulation of that whole upper sector of the mountain. There are all of those qualitative features about the proposal that I would say are, for our part, as or even more compelling than the sheer increase in volume of skiers that we've seen back there. But to Heather's point, it really is heavily skied terrain. It's heavily skied terrain without the benefit of avalanche control or good circulation or an integration into the rest of the mountain. And we're trying to do all of those things with this proposal. It's just not the numbers of who's skiing, how many people are skiing it, or what have you. And while I understand that concern or possible apprehension on your part, insofar as the metric of increased use or demand gives you pause, because there's the fear that somehow skiing will continue to expand, or somehow it's inevitable that, you know, we continue to, you know, move or add terrain. I think it's important to remember the full regulatory framework there. For one thing, Pandora's is in our special use permit. It's in a special use permit that's part of the White River National Forest. The White River National Forest 2002 plan identifies quite clearly those areas under what they call Management Area 8.25, which should be ski areas, either present or potential. Pandora's is in that master plan for the entire White River National Forest. Areas beyond and to the south, for example, down Richmond Ridge, not in the Forest Service plan, not in the White River plan, not in ski management area 8.25. So none of those areas really on the federal level are designated for skiing. Skiing is designated in the area that's within our permit boundary and our special use permit, of which Pandora's is a part and has long been a part. If there's some fear or concern that somehow this inevitably leads to, you know, intrusion into other rural and remote, I'd remind everybody that we have to go through a very rigorous review. At the federal level, we have to conform with federal regulations. We have to conform with that 2002 White River plan. We've got to conform and meet NEPA requirements, the environmental reviews. We've got to stay within our special use permit. We've got to operate under federally approved operating plans. We've got to have an accepted mountain master plan federally. And then in the county, we've got the county's comp plan. Again, the Aspen Mountain Master Plan, which from here on doesn't necessarily include anything farther away or beyond the boundary we're talking about, all of which that has to be approved ultimately by the BOCC. So we're subject to all of those things. And I think those are taken together a very, very, very comprehensive regulatory review of all of the factors that would either justify a land use of skiing or not call for it and propose something else. But we think we, on a quantitative and qualitative level, really meet and conform with all those applicable plans, and believe that the regulatory framework that is there is highly protective of, if you will, unforeseen expansions into other territory by independent skiers. You know, and we can't control what independent parties might do via snow machine or something of that nature.
Monty had a question for David or Heather.
Yeah, if Cindy's right and you guys are welcome to the East of Aspen Master Plan talks or influence on that. And Cindy, if that plan is coming out soon, do they have time to go into the plan and meet with the caucus and bring their points in, especially if you're not doing it this summer? I was just kind of wanted to see what soon meant. And if there's some possibility that the ski co can go in there and bring up their issues with them and see if they can get on board with that rather than have to amend the plan, you know, ourselves here. I didn't know the timing of that. You know how this summer construction's gone. Would that be something that would put them back years, or, you know, is that even a possibility?
I can't speak for the timing of what the ski co needs, you know, to gear up to actually make improvements. But as far as the master plans are concerned, whoops, Sorry, I'm in a strange place. The master plans are concerned. I think that we will be starting this summer. I cannot guarantee, given the public process, how long that will take. We'll be sending out the full existing conditions report, or are we sending out the notice that people can review the full existing conditions report and get involved in the process. But I cannot guarantee how long that will take. It's just a matter of, how long it takes given the extent of the planning area. We know we have quite a bit of interest in the Richmond Hill Ridge area, obviously, from east of Aspen and Castle Creek. And then we also have the east of Aspen caucus group itself. Other than that, we haven't had a lot of, there aren't that many people in the other areas, but we definitely want to let them know that what's going on within the plan so that they can be involved. But Monty, I'm so sorry. I can't tell you how long that might take once people get involved, because Richmond Hill Ridge is definitely going to take some time. There's a lot of questions up there. There are a lot of potential changes, and that's why we feel as staff so strong that the full master plan process should take place prior to any approvals here, because we feel that there are just a lot of things that haven't been looked at, as Dave said, in years, and they need to be looked at. What are the impacts today? And what should be happening? I hear everything across the board. People who would like to see that area more developed for, the backcountry or the cross country a little more formalized. I hear people who would like to do, short-term rentals that are happening, or, that kind of thing to make it more accessible. Then I also hear people who are dyed in the wool. No, we really want this to remain very remote and not as easily accessible. So it's going to be a big public conversation, and I can't predict how long that's going to take. Sorry.
But that's not going to happen. I mean, so there's not a short, this summer that master plan will not be developed. But you did say that SKICO has the right to join that and vote. Do they have votes with that and are able to,
Dave, yeah, no, definitely when we do a master plan, everyone can be involved. What I think David Corbin is saying is that he's not involved in the East of Aspen caucus group. The East of Aspen caucus is a boundary that's been defined and does not include all of the master plan area. So definitely the SKICO is not involved in the East of Aspen caucus boundary, but is more than welcome to participate in the full East of Aspen master plan. So that's a distinction, and they're not precluded from that. And that is a fact. So there.
David, you have your hand up as well. Or Monty, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I'm done.
David.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I'd want just to add the observation in terms of Monty's question. When the Richmond Ridge management plan was undertaken and done, it took at least 2 years. I think that was initiated in '98 and finished in 2000, and ended up essentially, again, just being a management plan largely associated with just primarily travel and access and roads and things like that. So it took 2 years just to do that. 20 years ago, the last time anything was really considered up there. Our observation on other master planning exercises in the county, I would say what I've witnessed or observed is they can take typically anywhere from 1 to 3 years before you see finalization of plans. Whether that's the, Aspen comp plan or something associated with, one of the sub areas or what have you. That's just sort of what I've seen. And again, we've already been in process on a code required process for the mountain master plan that's 2 years and still running. And so we'd rather not wait for another 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 years for the next update.
Thank you, David. This is probably out of character and someone can criticize me for this later, but Kevin Warner is also on the line, and I don't know if he had an opportunity to speak earlier, if he joined late, if you're over Zoomed. But Kevin, I realize you're on the line, and if you did have comments, we opened a public comment earlier. Again, I don't know if we passed you by or you joined late.
He came on later. Did you want me to open it up to him?
I'd be welcome to open up to Kevin as he's joined us, and it's domain expertise relevant to the conversation we're having. Again, my apology both to the applicant as well as staff and fellow commissioners if I'm going out of order, but I see Kevin's on the line, and if this was a room, we would have seen him earlier.
Kevin, hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, and thanks, Jeffrey. I was on with the Board of County Commissioners until like 10 after 6, and just hopped on here afterwards. And so no, I wasn't on earlier and probably missed everything important to me. But just wanted to join and be able to learn a little bit more about the discussions around the Pandora's expansion, but David actually covered it really well, maybe even better than I could have, when he was talking about where the Forest Service is at and where, how this fits into our planning processes. So as David mentioned earlier, we have our kind of like almost like zoning that we have that is our forest plan, our land and resource management plan. And again, this area is an 8.25. It's a ski area. And so when we look at that, we look at that and think about what are the right ways to enhance that experience for users of the national forest. And so a few years back, as you guys all know, because you have that document, my boss, the forest supervisor who signs all of the decisions regarding our longer term permits, including ski areas, signed a decision saying that this is something that we support. An expansion there is something that the Forest Service supports. We've looked at the environmental impacts of that, and that this is not something that we find has a significant impact. And so, we signed that decision allowing and authorizing that activity to begin on national forest land. So, we see the Pandora's expansion as a next step for Aspen Mountain in providing that visitor experience and support moving forward in that way, recognizing that there's a whole nother level of processes that have to be gone through, and we try to do our best to not interject ourselves too much in those, but just join to be able to hear a little bit about what's going on, and also if there was an opportunity to just state that the Forest Service is here as a partner with both the county as well as the ski company, to say this is a decision that in our realm we've already made, and then we support moving forward. So.
Kevin, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for the chance.
Appreciate it. I have a quick question, I guess, for both Suzanne and Cindy and Ellen. So there is most of the folks that are on this call approved of the rezoning in 2019, or at least this body approved the rezoning. So we could be sitting on this board in 2021, have said yes to rezoning, but then basically side with staff and say, look, there's a full process and there's a full master plan process, and we say no to resolution number 2, but it's not inconsistent with the rezoning we said yes to in 2019. Does that make sense?
I think the
It's sort of a catch-22 question about Pandora.
Yeah, I mean, really, you have a recommendation that you made to the BOCC.
Yeah.
That is, memorialized in a resolution that still stands.
Right.
So if you opted not to amend the East Aspen master plan, consistent with staff's recommendation, right, SKICO can still go back in front of BOCC. Your recommendation still stands, and the BOCC continues its consideration of the rezoning. I think, does that?
That answers my, yeah, again, I was trying to make a movie joke, and I'm old. I can't make movie jokes, but no. So the answer would be, I could still vote no on number 2, and it would be consistent with our findings 2 years ago. So is in essence what the question was. And I don't know if Cindy, you had anything further.
No.
So at this point, any further commissioner questions or comments for either staff or the applicant? Again, for those folks who called in, thank you. And again, I appreciate you letting me indulge, and the gentleman who was late, shame on you for going to BOCC meetings that run over. Sorry, Kevin, I had to hold you out on that. I don't see any further hands from the panelists. Sorry, David, you've got your hand up.
I'll chime in just to,
Chelsea.
I appreciate all the representation and discussion and the staff's memo and the legal analysis of the impact of proposing an amendment to a master plan and the effects and the consideration of the caucus. And I also appreciate the U.S. Forest Service and staff's comments in response to our questions. Everybody's really thought this out carefully, and we've had the opportunity to discuss it and its effects, and outweigh the positive and negatives together in discussion. And I feel like being consistent with previous decisions 2 years ago, and then also a couple months ago, I'd like to make a motion to approve the second resolution, making amendments to the master plan. That's my thoughts for today. And that's the motion I'm making.
So there's a motion on the floor. It is on page 12 or page 11, depending on how you count. Motion by Chelsea, which is a resolution of the Pitkin County Planning and Zoning Commission adopting certain amendments to the 2003 East of Aspen Independence Pass Master Plan. I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Monty.
Further discussion regarding Chelsea's motion or Monty's second?
Yes.
Joe?
Should we, before we vote on that, go back to where we were with the comments that the ski company was in the process of, we were looking at that screen before we got into this, and go through those items that SKICO felt that they could dial back a little bit and see how that comes out, rather than going straight to the decision on option 2.
So I guess it's a question from Rye. We have a motion and we have a second, and I'm assuming we're in discussion. And I understand
Happy to
Heather.
withdraw my motion. Hey, Jeffrey, I'm happy to withdraw my motion if you want to compare attachment K to the second resolution and allow SKICO to make their recommendations for modifications. That's fine. Technically, though, I'm in the spirit of things and moving ahead, would like to see the approval of the master plan. So that's where I'm at. And if you were to take a straw poll. So I'd like to focus the staff questions and staff comments on bettering the second resolution or making it such that it would be, I don't know, in its best shape and form, best draft. So I agree with what Joe's saying, just in that spirit, let's move ahead.
So, and let's move ahead is we're going back to Heather and you're withdrawing your motion.
For now. Yes.
Heather Henry, you have the floor.
All right, I hope we can be pretty quick with this, to be honest, in having the ability to go through the staff's memo. Let me just see if I can make this plenty big enough. Can you all read that well enough? Okay. So obviously update to the name district was a given. B, revising paragraph C of the planning area boundaries section. So this that is highlighted in blue was really the only differentiation between our proposed amendments and the staff's. And so we accepted that revision. So moving on, so C, revise the provisions for the Aspen Mountain Richmond Ridge NPA. So this is the meat of a lot of this that related to creep, or how would it go any further than Pandora's, what else might come in if you were to open it up past just sort of that narrow interpretation of rural and remote, which again, at the time meant you were still allowing skiing. So 1C3 in black was as proposed by staff. And really ours is not very different from that, frankly. So either one of those language, we actually proposed to essentially go ahead and kind of separate the sentence. So maintain very specifically rural remote zoning on the privately held parcels along Richmond Ridge, and rural and remote or ski rec on the privately held parcels mining claims to the east and contiguous with the ski rec zone ski area boundary. So kind of to Zach's point, this can't just go wherever it wants to go. So this would very specifically be limiting it to only rural and remote, and only rural and remote and ski rec, and only within those areas contiguous to the ski area boundary, essentially the existing ski area boundary. So again, either one of those read the same. Staff is having to, because it's a crunch timeline, they're kind of seeing this for the first time as well. And I'll just go through these really quickly because I think the only second one that we wanted to see back and included in the amendments was the whole idea of memorializing skiing as an existing use on Aspen Mountain. And so that it was this: preserve the open space and recreational values, uses and activities on the face of Aspen Mountain. And so we said, okay, let's take out the part about development should not preclude this. So for us, really how you could separate the recreational value by not recognizing the uses and activities, seem kind of incongruous, right? That the value of what's happening on Aspen Mountain is very much about those uses of downhill skiing and cross country. So, and this is back to Zach's, really, it's just about, again, talking about just the uses of Aspen Mountain. So wouldn't preclude the Nordic councils, where they want to go on Richmond Ridge. Really, that is outside the bounds of anything that we're looking at tweaking within this. And then the last two we said looked great from the proposal of staff. So it's just those two, phrase, this version of 1C3, this version of 1C3, and can we memorialize the uses and activities of downhill and cross-country skiing on the face of Aspen Mountain? We'd like to go ahead and include that, but we took out the development part. Additionally, we have some recitals that were in our proposed resolution that were not in staff's. So we took out none of those, but went ahead and included some of ours. Probably we wouldn't get to that point tonight. And so they're quite straightforward that we could probably work out later.
Questions for Heather's additions and modifications to resolution number 2? And question for the commissioner is there's interest from, there's roughly 7 attendees. There's new information that's just been presented that wasn't in the packet. It is a duly noticed public hearing. Would the commissioners be open to listening to any further comment from the 7 attendees on the line as well?
Yeah, yes, would be my comment.
So at this point, it is a public hearing. It's a public duly noticed public hearing. If there are public questions or comments, given Heather Henry's additional information that was presented this evening that was not, again, in the public packet. And thank you for those online who chatted and asked to be recognized and have additional questions or comments for either the presenters, staff, or the commissioners. So Bonnie, we're open to public comment.
Marcella Larson, I have asked you to unmute. Are you able to speak?
Yes.
You're on.
So, as you all should be aware, it's totally improper for you to be doing these kind of amendments without public input. So this is a comprehensive plan. And so for you to be negotiating with ski company without the public involved is totally improper. You know this. We sat on P&Z for a long time. We never did anything like this. So I'd ask you to stop doing this. It's so improper. And, for me, I guess I'm embarrassed for you. I don't know why you're doing this or why you would be participating in this. So just ask that, the staff continue with their planning process. Please do that. Thank you.
Ms. Marcella. Any further questions or comments regarding Heather's additional information regarding resolution number 2? I'll turn it back to Zach. If I see no further comment, if you do have further comment, just please raise your hand in the, I guess, the attendee panel, but Zach, you have the floor.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I just had a question about where the language preserve the open space and recreational values, uses, and activities on the face of Aspen Mountain. Is that language precluding the ridge, or it seems like that? How did you come up with that language? And it's I just want to make sure that term, obviously, the face of Aspen Mountain to me is the ski area, which is already preserved in perpetuity as a ski mountain and a recreational area. So it's saying something that's already there. We're talking about the ridge or it's that term is I don't know why it's there, or or within the ski rec or the soon to be or proposed ski rec zone, or I'm not sure. Can somebody?
Sure. So the original statement in the East of Aspen Master Plan reads, preserve the open space and recreational values on the face of Aspen Mountain. That's in the 2003 version. So we didn't change that geographic definition, but we essentially said to ourselves exactly what you're saying. So there's a series of other goals that are all under that heading in terms of Aspen Mountain, Richmond Ridge. This particular preserve the open space and recreational values on the face of Aspen Mountain. So we, thinking the same as you, let's ensure if that was an obvious given at the time, because skiing was a use allowed in rural and remote, with a special review, it may have just sort of gone unsaid. And so for us, it is to memorialize that by ensuring that it is stated in this, the face of Aspen Mountain is skied. Let's memorialize that a critical component of the recreational value is the uses and activities, including downhill and cross country. So it seems like we're stating the obvious, and I think we are, but because there was this maybe inherent, omission at the time, we kind of said, this is an important one to us to ensure that it's now included as part of these amendments. And you'll see that relates to the one above as well, why we're now including the rezoning as ski rack.
That does staff have any issue with that? I mean, that language is fine, and I have no problem memorializing that language. I just am concerned about the new territory that we are considering expanding into is not on the face of Aspen Mountain, to me, geographically.
So, I mean, Zach, I think your question, and I was doing the same thing as I was working on my memo, what is the face of Aspen Mountain? It's not defined in the East Aspen plan, and I think probably a lot of us could have different versions of what that might be. So, again, I think that's to our point of going, that's really something that should be more broadly discussed. We don't necessarily know what exactly was meant. I mean, I don't know what was meant in 2003. And right, that probably should be better explained or described in the plan. Right, is that just what you can see from downtown? Is it what I think of as the ski area? Is it that whole flank of, what really is, the Aspen Mountain? So again, I mean, I feel like that's, as I looked at that language, that's a whole different conversation, but that's just the carry forward of the language that's there. But in in a bigger discussion of the master plan, I think it would be really important to be very clear about what everybody's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in my definitions of what my geographical definitions of the of Aspen Mountain are obviously unassailable. Any local would say the face is the front side and all the skiable terrain, and then past the gondola is the backside, which is divided into the Little Annie's Basin, which is the west side, and the Pandora's, which is the east side. And the face doesn't cover that. That doesn't explain what we're talking about.
Monty, you had your hand up.
Yes. So to Marcella's question, staff, do you feel we're doing something inappropriate, or this is something that's never been done? I just kind of want to hear your guys' comment about that. If so, when we're looking at this, I'd just like to see what you think.
I can start, and Miss Cindy may want to jump in as well, but no, we have not operated like this in the past and done, partial amendments. We've just adopted master plans. I mean, that's consistent through time. So, we have not had this approach before.
Is it inappropriate to have this approach at this time?
I think that's been our recommendation, is that we think it's not appropriate, and that it's appropriate to do this as part of a comprehensive update to the East Aspen Master Plan.
Sure. May I jump in, Monty? And I appreciate what Suzanne is saying, and I agree it's important to not do something that's inappropriate. And I think 3 months ago, when we met and discussed this before, we asked a lot of questions about the frequency of the updating of the master plans. And so if you can remember back to that conversation, which I believe you were a part, there's been some lag in the updating of the East of Aspen master plan. And I think the kind of sentiment that we as planning and zoning commissioners shared in that last meeting was that we shouldn't punish the applicant for, over 10 years going by since the last update to the East of Aspen plan. And as they make reasonable expansion of the ski area, that we can make reasonable accommodations as a P&Z commission or recommendations to the BOCC, and that wouldn't by default create our action or cause our action to be inappropriate. I think that was the same question Joe was asking earlier when he was talking about the challengeability, which was a question I asked 3 months ago also, is whether this was going to be called arbitrary and capricious. And so I think that we've had that debate before, and it's important to also reconsider today, but I'm still comfortable feeling like our actions to approve an amendment to the East of Aspen master plan today are not inappropriate. That's my opinion. And I recall that from being our opinion a few months ago as well.
Yeah, I remember that too. And I just want to follow it up so we all discuss it once more, because it was raised again, and just make sure we're comfortable with what we're doing.
Sure, I think that's fair. I just wanted to remind you that we did address it before, and that was we've had the same.
And David Corbin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, no, I was just going to remark that I too recall hearing at the last hearing in February that indeed the P&Z and its commissioners were empowered to make and adopt master plans, comprehensive plans, and were empowered to amend them. And that's certainly our understanding. And we believe from the applicant's point of view that this body has that ability and even responsibility to amend comprehensive plans.
Thank you. Jasmine, you've been quiet. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I don't think I can show you that I was raising my hand, but the more we go through this, the more concerned I am about the fact that we're doing this in this level of detail at this particular point, when there are so many issues and so many nuances that I think really need to be looked at in the context of a master plan. I really can't support this.
Okay. Further questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a quick one. Is Rye isn't on this call, is he?
Mr. Neely is on the call.
Okay, because inappropriate and appropriate aren't legal terms. So it would be nice to know whether I'm not really concerned whether of inappropriate or appropriate, whether the legality of this is, and then also when the last meeting that we had, we also discussed whose responsibility is it for updating these master plans. And if staff could remind me of what that was, because as I recall, the onus of updating these master plans isn't solely on, there's multiple parties involved. Is that not correct?
Well, Zach, I can answer your first question, and then I'll let Suzanne or Cindy answer your next question about how the process, either historically or even to date, has been carried out. As far as the legality of amending the master plan, in part, that is something that can be done under Colorado law. So you can do that. You can make an amendment, you can extend the plan, you can add to a plan. All those things can happen. So I'll have to let either Suzanne or Cindy address whose responsibility it is. I don't know whether they'll be able to clarify that for you, but hopefully they can.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that part. Yeah, by state statute, it's the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's your body that adopts master plans. Historically in Pitkin County, staff has taken the lead, although I will say in past years, Planning and Zoning Commissioners have been more involved in taking part in development of master plans and neighborhood master plans. At one point, we even had what's called the Long Range Planning and Zoning Commission, which helped to develop several of the master plans and the Aspen Area Community Plan initially in '93. And I don't know if any of you would remember that, but P&Z has been more involved in past years. Just in the more recent years, the Planning and Zoning Commission has asked staff to take more of the lead, and we've kept you up to speed. And then all of the individual neighborhoods have been involved in their caucus areas and brought those plans forward to you. So that's where we've been with the master planning process recently. But technically, it's the Planning and Zoning Commission by state statute that adopts master plans.
And I would argue that we spent most of the last 2 years focused on caucus master plans, house size, energy use, climate change. You know, our drivers, I guess, were elsewhere. I want to go back and for Suzanne, I guess I have to raise my hand. If we in essence do nothing tonight and we say, look, BOCC, it's wonderful that you've put this process in limbo and didn't really clarify what you would like to see with regard to Pandora. And we say, hey, look, planning and zoning in 2019, we passed a rezoning. We said you should be skiing. We said yes to Victor's Lift. And, you know, that's what we've said. And so that, you know, we just sort of reiterate that to the Board of County Commissioners, and then to staff, you know, we vote on resolution number 1, and we deny the proposal to amend the master plan out of out of sequence. And so the applicant leaves with knowing that this body has already voted. We said yes to rezoning. We said yes to the permitted uses. We said yes to the limitation of uses. You know, so that stands, and then we vote on resolution number 1, and that's a way forward, potentially with the county commissioners. So I guess my question would be for Suzanne and Cindy, would that be a potential way forward for this conversation? And Heather, I see your hand, sorry. Just give me 1 minute.
So I guess in terms of a way forward, I mean, I guess, like I said before, you have a recommendation to the BOCC already. If you opt not to pursue amendments to the East Aspen Master Plan at this time, SKICO can go back. And I guess to clarify, it wasn't that the BOCC only put this in limbo by being prepared to, vote 2-2, which could have been a denial of the plan. So the applicant requested to continue it at that time. So again, a lot of time has gone by, and definitely appreciate that aspect of it. But
you're currently on the BOCC agenda for the rezoning of Pandora.
And that is just that's been a continuance since October 2019. We have definitely stated when we do go back to the BOCC with a further recommendation from the P&Z, or, or that, not, there is no further recommendation from the P&Z, that will be fully renoticed. So, that hearing is not happening next week. That will be continued again to a later date. And when we actually have a date for that to be considered, it will be fully renoticed.
Heather.
Thanks. I guess just is sort of in answering your question in a way, Jeffrey, for us, if we connect the dots, we left, kind of pulled up, and you guys have this in our memo, we left this body previously with that recommendation for approval for the rezoning. In the course of the review from the BOCC, it really ultimately was what was putting them in a 2-to-2 situation, was, and this was verbalized, was this disconnect and apparent conflict with these findings that were in conformance with the comprehensive plan, presumably meaning the East of Aspen plan, right, which is rolled up into the comprehensive plan. So here were these conflicts in what this board recommended to the BOCC and what the BOCC was reading, right, in the language of the East of Aspen. So we go back, and for us to then connect the dots, we find ourselves in this position that we presented, 2 months ago. I'm not sure if I heard Cindy correctly, but it sounded like she was saying they were not advertising for the work that they were doing on the East of Aspen, like, because we were in this process. So somehow us in this process was slowing down the East of Aspen, proceeding. So maybe that's not what you meant, but and I'll let you jump in. But so as we presented the last time, really for us, we said, okay, well, let's take those particular items that the BOCC highlighted and bring those back to you all to say, if we were to address these particular things on this very narrow scope, it would memorialize the interpretation of the 2003 East of Aspen Master Plan as it relates to skiing in Pandora's, period.
Understood.
Period, the end. I think that because we agree with so much of the other, it needs to be planned. Those things need to move forward, about Richmond Ridge, about floating on North Star, right? I mean, these things that are going to come in and be really vetted in the community. This proposal has been vetted for, I don't know when it started, David, 5-6 years, starting with the Forest Service process. So to say that there is no planning associated with these amendments and the Aspen Mountain Master Plan, which contemplated everything related to Pandora's as an inclusion and its rezoning, is really a disservice from our perspective as an applicant in terms of the money, the commitment, and then even on the public side. So if you kind of connect the dots, that's how we got to where we are. We're trying to keep it really narrow and very much focused on what the BOCC said they had this conflicting issue with and wanted you all to take a look at. The resolution is the way to make that statement and put a stake in the ground that you support this same recommendation from 3 years ago.
Yeah. It's 7:13 p.m. I'm assuming both the applicant, staff, as well as the commissioners would like to continue on until we reach a resolution this evening.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine continuing on. I would like to find a resolution to the, or not, that's the wrong word choice. a solution to the merger of the language that SKICO's proposed separately is a new red line, if you will, to resolution number 2 that we have for consideration tonight. Is anybody with a solution as to how to incorporate the appropriate language, or what do the commissioners think about Heather's newly proposed language?
I would say I'm open to you making another motion based on Heather's draft personally. I think that, you know, looking at, we approved the rezoning in March of 2019. It's a little over 2 years since then. And so, you know, like we discussed at the last meeting about moving this forward, I'm not overly concerned about the definition of face of Aspen Mountain. I suppose we could say something like the you know, the existing ski area or the ski area boundaries, if someone thinks it's necessary to clarify that. But I would
I agree with
be
you,
in
Joe.
favor of proceeding. And,
Yeah, I agree with you,
incorporating
Joe.
it. Yeah.
I do. Yeah, I do
So
too.
then I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2. And it's hard to pull this up, with the incorporated language that Heather has proposed this evening and added as a red line in the appropriate sections, because I agree that the spirit of her red lines are in line with the amendment to the master plan. And I'll add another comment to my motion that I think we expected when we all agreed last time 3 months ago to not approve the other action, that we were waiting for this amendment to come. So I think that this follows suit. So anyway, that's my motion.
I'll second the motion. I'll second the motion.
So we have a first from Chelsea and a second for Joe, which is resolution number 2 as amended by Heather on Heather's screen. Further commissioner comments or questions? I guess that would be Zach, Monty, or Jasmine regarding resolution 2 as amended on Heather's screen. So I will state that I would vote in favor of resolution number 2, but not willing to make field roast on Heather's screen, I guess. That was a vegetarian joke. So I'd be willing to accept resolution number 2 as drafted, and it would be a yes vote on number 2. I'm not willing to accept the resolution as drafted, or current, you know, I'll vote no on the current vote. So further commissioner questions or comments?
That's because you don't want, and Jeff, that's because you don't want the red lines.
Yeah, I'm not accepting red lines. I would accept the original conversation and the staff drafted
You have a
resolution.
why behind that? Yeah, I get what you're saying. Why?
I can't read 6-point font
with red line.
Yeah, I can't read 6-point font. And again, we've got a packet and there's 2 resolutions in there. So I'd be willing to accept the resolution that's currently in the packet as drafted by staff. It's just me being obstinate.
Sure, but wasn't Heather's red lines in attachment K? Or are Heather's red lines different from attachment K?
Again, we've got 2 resolutions in the packet. Those are attachments. So I'd be willing to accept resolution number 2 as drafted by staff.
I would be willing to support the resolution as drafted by staff without the red lines until I can. Yeah, I haven't. I agree with Jeff.
Yeah, I'm down with that too. I think this. I would support resolution 2.
I will not support resolution 2.
All right, then I withdraw my motion. Anybody want to make another motion?
Jeff or Zach, you going to make a motion?
Yeah, you said you weren't going to support mine, so mine is withdrawn. It's not going to go to vote because I can count. Jeff, Zach, Monty, want to make another motion?
I'll make a motion to accept resolution 2 and see how that goes with us.
So at this point, we have a resolution from Monty, which is a resolution of the Pitkin County Planning and Zoning Commission adopting certain amendments to the 2003 East of Aspen Independence Master Plan, which is on page 12 of your packet. And the resolution is to accept resolution number 2 as drafted by staff. I have a first from Monty. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
I have a second from Zach. Any further questions or comments regarding resolution number 2? Jasmine, your vote on resolution number 2?
No.
Joe, your vote on resolution number 2?
Yes.
Chelsea, your vote on resolution number 2?
Yes.
Monty?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Excellent. And Jeffrey, the vote passes 5-1 against. So resolution number 2 passes as drafted. Thank you for all of your time. And I'm assuming, Suzanne, that we will meet again on May 4th, which would be the follow-up to this meeting.
Yeah, you don't currently have any items scheduled on that meeting, and that would be your next regular meeting. So if you're willing to move forward, then we could bring forward a further resolution based on these amendments that you've adopted.
So I'm assuming from county commission or from P&Z commissioners, you're willing to review this on May 4th at a publicly noticed, duly publicly noticed hearing, which would be the first Tuesday in May, rather.
And Jeffrey, just to clarify, that will be a public meeting. It does not require
Public notice.
this at the P&Z for that recommendation.
Excellent. Sorry, U.S. Postal Service.
So does that mean we've closed the public hearing tonight? Maybe I missed that. Or we're leaving it open for next week or the May 4th?
I think Suzanne's saying we don't need to send out 1,500 mails, that it will be a public hearing. We will take public comment, but it will not be publicly noticed the same way this evening's was.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is, the public hearing on the consideration of the East Aspen Master Plan amendments, I think, right, you would close that public hearing because now you've taken action on that. So the next meeting would be a separate public meeting.
That's what I was asking you.
Just the rezoning request and a further recommendation.
Any further business this evening? I appreciate everyone staying till 7:22 p.m. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I got lucky tonight. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Everyone enjoy your evening and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thank you.